السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. This lecture, inshallah ta'ala, is about just trying to see the title here. Okay, this is not the one, but it's about the Dajjal, the signs of the hour, and one of the biggest signs of the hour, the fitna of Ad-Dajjal. And then the next session, inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about the coming of Isa ibn Maryam. The subject of the signs of the hour, and assuming that you guys have been following what has been mentioned before so that I don't repeat it over again, inshallah ta'ala. There is fiqh in it. We have to understand it in the right way, because this is according to what happened to the Muslim Ummah through centuries. Many people deviated. Many people, they did miserable things as a result of not understanding the fiqh, the proper understanding and dealing with these signs of the hour. And I would start with this and with a statement by one of the early generations of Islam, Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, when he said, the meanings of which, if the Dajjal comes out, if the Mahdi comes out, فَكُنْ آخِرْ مَنْ يُبَيِّعُ, be the last person to go give him the pledge. The Mahdi is coming. No doubt about this, and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ are abundance. But when it comes to the signs of the hour, there's no actions required from your side. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed. And there's no actions from the ummah to establish individually or collectively to bring any of these signs of the hour. It's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed, and it's going to happen. And subhanAllah, the fiqh of Imam Sufyan al-Thawri as a result of this is because how many throughout history of Muslims, they claimed falsely to be the Mahdi, and then people followed them blindly, and they end up, even many of them were killed and things of that nature. So that's why before all these fitan happened, he said, be the last one to give him the pledge, because you're not addressed by the revelation from Allah that you need to do anything. It's going to happen. So this is an important concept to understand when it comes to the signs of the hour. Human beings are fascinated with what's going to come ahead and things like this, and that's why they like to hear stories and details and how this is going to look like and how people will be like this. But we have to follow the proper methodology in things. We follow the wahy from Allah, the revelation from Allah. So these sessions, inshallah ta'ala, is not going to be necessarily stories and what's going to happen before what, but rather to deal with it the way the Prophet ﷺ did to the companions radiallahu anhum and to the ummah, and one of which is fitnat Ad-Dajjal. He warned ﷺ this ummah from Ad-Dajjal in many, many ahadith, very clear ahadith, and there is no doubt of its authenticity whatsoever, of course. And that's why those who deny this or alter its meanings, they are deviants. And because of that, there is no prophet, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, there is no prophet unless he warned his people from Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ being the last of the messengers, and he said, وَإِنَّهُ يَخْرُجُ فِيكُمْ, that he will come out in your time, meaning in the time of this ummah. There's no more messengers to come. So definitely he's coming. And the Prophet ﷺ himself did not know when the Dajjal will come. But some of the signs that are mentioned in the hadith, and that's why inshallah ta'ala we'll spend some time in understanding some of these hadith when it comes to the Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal. And part of that is to establish something in the deen. And as even one of the signs of the Dajjal, that he would come at a time when people are not talking about him. So that means people need to constantly warn against the Dajjal. And even if a person lived and died and he did not witness this biggest fitna ever to be observed on the face of earth, there is benefits in knowing the seeds of this fitna, so that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us, and everybody will be tried anyway. If it's not in this life, in the graves and things like this. So there's no way to run away from being tried. So that's why we need to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As the Prophet ﷺ said about the fitna of al-qabr, he said ﷺ, Inna Allah awha ilay, Allah inspired, revealed to me, أنكم تفتنون في قبوركم, that you will be tried in your graves, قريبا أو مثل فتنة الدجال, close to or the like of the fitna of the Dajjal. That means everybody will be tried. Some people will be saved from this, of course, not even facing the trials. And that's why, as it will be mentioned, the means to protect ourselves from the fitna of the Dajjal is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to be among al-iman. يُثَبِّتُ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِالْقَوْلِ الثَّابِتِ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives steadfastness to the believers, and part of that is to be obedient to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam in everything that He said alayhi salatu wasalam, without putting forward our own reasoning of things. You have wahy revelation, and we'll understand the meaning of this inshallah ta'ala in some of these ahadith. First of all, the Prophet ﷺ said that I will, because of the time will be brief, I won't mention all the details of the hadith and the takhrij of it and the narrators and so on, but quoting the shahid or the point of reference from the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and for the rest of inshallah what's in the book for you to study inshallah ta'ala. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, ما بين خلق آدم إلى قيام الساعة خلق أكبر من الدجال. There is nothing from the time of Adam ﷺ till the day of judgment, a greater thing that or event that would happen greater than the Dajjal, or أمر أكبر من الدجال, a matter that is greater than the Dajjal. So this is, again the first point here, this is the biggest fitna that would ever afflict the human beings. And if we understand the concept and the meanings of fitna is not about physical destruction of the people. The fitna is when it comes to the purpose of this life. That many people will end up being in the hellfire because of the Dajjal, because of the fitan. That's what the fitan does. Fitan is not about people dying or people suffering from poverty or whatever there is. If they are upon al-iman wa taqwa, they are not afflicted by the fitna. The fitna is a trial to one's iman. And that's why this is a fitna that the Dajjal, he comes and he claims to be Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wal-'adhu billah, this is the Dajjal who is going to claim about himself. And amazingly, most of the human beings, they would follow him. Because they don't know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, إِنِّي لَأُنذِرُكُمُ, I am warning you from the Dajjal. لَأُنذِرُكُمُ, the ha at the end refers to the Dajjal. Right? I am warning you, after he mentioned the Dajjal ﷺ, he said, I am warning you against him. وَمَا مِن نَبِيٍّ إِلَّا أَنذَرَ قَوْمَهُ, and there is no prophet unless he warned his people. But then he said, وَلَكِنِّي سَأَقُولُ لَكُمْ فِيهِ قَوْلًا, I will say, mention something about the Dajjal that لَمْ يَقُلْهُ نَبِيٌّ لِقَوْمِ, no prophet had said that to his people before. So this is unique to this ummah, and that's why those who listen and apply this, they will be saved by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّهُ أَعْوَرْ وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِأَعْوَرْ, that he is a'war. A'war is someone that has bad eye, one bad eye, not one-eyed, that he has two eyes but one is bad. وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِأَعْوَرْ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not a'war. And always the ulama, when they mention this, they say how much important it is for the people to believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right way. Those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right way with His names and attributes, we say, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, nothing is the like of Allah. So and part of that is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the perfect names and attributes. Imagine someone comes with a bad eye and he's claiming to be the Lord of the Alameen, and most of the people would follow him because he's doing things that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do. He ordered the skies to rain and it rains, ordered the earth to bring its treasures and it does. Whoever follows him, they become in prosperity and richness and all kinds of things, and those who do not follow him, he leaves them in poverty and misery. So the heart, when it's attached to the dunya, it's the deal is to follow the Dajjal. But then the end result of this is an everlasting punishment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is the benefit of learning the names and attributes of Allah and the aqeedah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most perfect and nothing is the like of Allah. But then what the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the prophets before did not mention, وَإِنَّ بَيْنَ عَيْنَيْهِ مَكْتُوبٌ كَافِرٌ, between his eyes is written kafir. Or in some of the narrations, kaf, fa, ra. يَقْرَأُهُ كُلُّ مُؤْمِنٍ, every believer would read it, even if he's illiterate, even if you don't know Arabic. If a person is a believer, he will see that between the two eyes of Ad-Dajjal. Is it physically written like this? Yes. We don't distort the meanings of it. It's not something metaphoric. It's not something you would feel it. مكتوب بين عينيه, written between his two eyes. كافر, only the believers would read it, even if they're not able to read, or they literate, they don't read. So this is something there. There's many hadith that talks about the Dajjal, by the way. The Prophet ﷺ has mentioned in some of the hadith that he would speak to the Sahaba radiallahu anhum for a long period of time. One of which is that he prayed Fajr ﷺ and he addressed the people till Salatul Dhuhr. And then he prayed Dhuhr, and then he got up on the mimbar again and he addressed the people till Asr. And from after Asr till Maghrib, the entire day. And he told them, alayhi salatu wasalam, about every ma huwa ka'inun, what's going to happen till the day of judgment. Every single detail of what's going to happen till the day of judgment. Some people, by the power and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they retain that. And some, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they made to forget for a reason. So whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants for this ummah to, and anything that the Prophet ﷺ said is preserved for this ummah when it comes to matters of the deen, to protect the deen of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ. One of these hadith, that there will be some form of drought and things like that before him, and in a long hadith. And then what the Prophet ﷺ said when he mentioned these things one year after the other, someone asked the Prophet ﷺ, فَمَا يُعِيشُ النَّاسَ فِي ذَلِكَ الزَّمَانِ, what would sustain the life of the people when there's drought and hunger and so on? He said, التهليل والتكبير والتحميد, saying La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, Alhamdulillah, and that will be sufficient for them, as the Prophet ﷺ said. Well, of course, there's a relationship between a-dhikr and a-rizq and the provisions from Allah. And this hadith in Sunan al-Majah and others, and it's a sound hadith. As we heard, some of the characteristics of the Dajjal that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that he is short, that he is ja'd, his hair is wavy or rough, he's a'war, matmusul ayn, his eye is wiped, and then he said ﷺ, which is a very amazing, when you read the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, every word, of course, it's meant to be there. With these clear signs that when you're sitting like this and you hear it, you think, okay, that's obvious. Once the Dajjal comes, we know him, no problem. But still the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَإِنْ أُلْبِسَ عَلَيْكُمْ, if you get confused of the Dajjal, confused. This is how the fitna, it's the biggest fitna. And you see how many fitna we get exposed to, and it made you sometimes that you want to follow, or following even the fitan. So this is the biggest fitna. So a person should not feel that he is secure from it. It's only by the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What the Prophet ﷺ said, فَإِنْ أُلْبِسَ عَلَيْكُمْ, if it becomes confusing for you, فَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ رَبَّكُمْ لَيْسَ بِأَعْوَرٍ. First thing is, have the knowledge, and that's the knowledge of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The knowledge of the aqidah, that the people would make you turn away from it. Don't learn the names and attributes and all of this. And when it comes to these physical attributes of Allah, oh, there's no such a thing. Have the knowledge that your Lord, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not a'war, is not one-eyed. Right? So this is clearly for the knowledge of it. وَأَنَّكُمْ لَن تَرَوْا رَبَّكُمْ. Plus the second thing is that you would never see your Lord in this dunya. This is a aqidah. No one will be able to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this life. It's only in the hereafter. Hereafter the believers will see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's the most joyful thing in Jannah. Nothing is more joyful for them than to see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In this dunya, إِنَّكَ لَن تَرَانِي, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said even to Musa alayhi salam, you would never see me in this world. So once a person have this matter of aqidah clear, inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect him. There is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that mentions, warning against the Dajjal, that he is going to go throughout the earth in a very fast pace. As he said ﷺ, لَيْسَ مِنْ بَلَدٍ إِلَّا سَيَطَأُهُ الدَّجَّالِ إِلَّا مَكَّةَ وَالْمَدِينَةِ. There's no city or town unless the Dajjal would يطأوه, that means he'll walk in it, he'll be in it, except Mecca and Medina. Mecca and Medina are the two cities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect them from the Dajjal, but those who are in Mecca and Medina from the hypocrites of this ummah, the Mecca or Medina will shake and then it will push away the munafiqeen or the hypocrites and for them to join the Dajjal. But he would not enter physically Mecca or Al-Medina. The fitna here, and the Prophet ﷺ did not leave anything that we need unless he warned us against. One of the great fitna that the Dajjal has is that he comes with Jannah and fire. He comes with garden and fire. And this is exactly as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I'm sorry, not Jannah, ma'. Inna ma'ahu ma' wa nar. Inna ma'ahu ma'an wa naran. He comes with water and fire. The two opposites. Water and fire. But then he said, ﷺ, and I want you to pay attention to this, because this is, when you have instructions, everything is by instructions, right? And need to follow the instructions. And they make sure that you follow the instructions and don't outsmart the instructions, because you can ruin yourself and others. So follow the instructions. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, فَنَارُهُ مَاءٌ بَارِدٌ وَمَاؤُهُ نَارٌ, that the fire with him is cold water. And the water is fire. So, and then he said in that one narration, Sahih Muslim, فَلَا تَهْلِكُوا, don't destroy yourself. Don't ruin yourself. So, don't think that the water that he has is water. No, this is fire. And the fire that he has, that you see it physically as fire, this is cold water. The second hadith or narration also in Sahih Muslim, which is an amazing one, in which he said that you would have two kinds of running rivers. One of it is ma'un abyad, clear white water, and the other one is ra'y al-ayn. And the Prophet ﷺ said ra'y al-ayn, that means you see it physically with your eyes, so that nobody would come later, and they still did. They say this is something metaphoric. It doesn't really means water and fire. You're talking about fairy tales here, right? The Prophet ﷺ says ra'y al-ayn. You see it with your own eyes, no doubt about this whatsoever. The other one is fire, narun ta'ajjaj, fire that is very strong. Then listen to the instructions. فَإِمَّا أَدْرَكَنَّ أَحَدٍ, if you had to face it, and that also is mentioned in another hadith, we'll go into a different hadith, that the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا سَمِعْتَ بِالدَّجَّالِ, what should you do if you hear about the Dajjal? Dajjal is out. فَنْأَ عَنْهُ. فَنْأَ عَنْهُ, that means run away from him. Be as far as you can from him, which is always the case for the fitan. Fitan, we don't go to it, you run away from it. You will be pushed to get into the fitan, and people won't leave you alone. Why don't you speak about this? Why don't you speak about the fitan? And they want you to speak about it, they want you to be part of it, and you're a coward if you're not doing this or that. So when it comes to the Dajjal, if you hear about him, فَنْأَ عَنْهُ, stay away from him. And then the Prophet ﷺ clearly stated that a man would go to him thinking that he knows him, because of these hadith, for example, he knows the Dajjal. ثُمَّ لَا يَلْبَثْ, and very soon he would follow him. يَتْبَعُ. From a distance, when it's hidden, when he doesn't see him, oh, I know the Dajjal, so let me see this exciting thing, at least that will be written in history that I saw the Dajjal. Right? Then people, they go see him, and then they end up following the Dajjal, which is, وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ, the hellfire. So the instruction is, listen to the Prophet ﷺ, and don't judge, don't go by what your judgment is, and what you see with what people are doing. That's the importance of the wahy. My dear brothers and sisters, the seriousness of following the wahy before any taste, before any thinking, before anything whatsoever. But then in going back to that hadith where he says that he has two rivers, فَإِمَّا أَدْرَكَنَّ أَحَدٍ, if you have to face it, there's no run away from it, then فَلْيَأْتِ النَّهْرَ الَّذِي يَرَاهُ نَارًا. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, then go to the one that you see as fire. Because it's a test, that means people are tested. You have to go either to the one that is water or the one that is fire. So if you had to face this and you could not run away from it, go to the one that is fire. You see with your own eyes that it's fire, you're going with your own self like this, choosing to go to the one that is fire. And by the mercy of Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed his favor upon us that the Prophet ﷺ says it, then what to do then, because it's very scary to do this. He says, well, يغمض. When you go to the one that is fire, close your eyes, because you might be affected by the fitna, right? Close your eyes, ثم ليطأطئ رأسه. Close your eyes and lower your head like this. فيشرب منه, then drink from it. فإنه ماء بارد. It's cold water. This is amazing, right? This requires full submission to the wahy. You're going to what you see that is fire. Don't say, well, I know that this is the Dajjal, I'll open my eyes. Listen to the instructions. Close your eyes. May Allah protect us from facing these fitan. He says, فَلْيُغْمِدْ عَيْنَهُ. To that details, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, let him close his eyes and lower his head to drink from this, what appears to be fire. فَإِنَّهُ مَاءٌ. Not just any water even. فَإِنَّهُ مَاءٌ بَارِدٌ. It's cold water for you to drink. And this is again something that we only get to know from the wahy. And by the way, everything that is mentioned about the Dajjal, you would find the resemblance of it, as the ulama, they say, in this life that we live when it comes to the fitan. That's the biggest fitna. The fitan, even if it's small, it has some things for us to protect ourselves from it, one of which is this. The fitan, people think that this is a good thing. And for the fire of this world is sins and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even if it tastes good and it looks good. And the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the most pleasant thing in this life, even if it requires for a person to struggle and to strive. The fitan that he comes with, and that's why most of the people would follow him. Again, the earth brings its treasures, the skies is commanded and it rains when he commands it. The non-living things would follow him, right? And he would, even as the Prophet ﷺ, he said that he would come to people, فَيَدْعُوهُمْ, he will invite them to follow him. فَيُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ, they will believe in him. وَيَسْتَجِبُونَ لَهُ, they follow him. فَيَأْمُرُ السَّمَاء فَتَمْطُرُ, so he commands the skies to rain. وَالْأَرْضِ فَتُنْبِتْ, and the earth to bring its plants. فَتَرُوحُ عَلَيْهِمْ سَارِحَتُهُمْ أَطْوَلُ مَا كَانَتْ ذَرًا وَأَسْبَغُ ضُرُوعًا, and the animals will go and come back full with milk and all kinds of pleasant things in their life. Who on the face of the earth would not follow someone like this? And this is the real fitna. If you have someone now flying in the air, people would follow him. Imagine someone is like this. And then he said, then he goes to other people and he called them, فَيَرُدُّونَ عَلَيَّ قَوْلًا, they would not believe in him. So he leave them and go. فَيُصْبِحُونَ مُمْحِلِينَ لَيْسَ بِأَيْدِيهِمْ شَيْءٌ مِّنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. They, in the morning, nothing of their wealth is in their hands. Nothing, they lose everything. And this is a test, and a person to witness that. And he would pass by al-khariba, the place that people throw the garbage in it and things like this, and he would say, أخرجي كنوزك, bring out your treasures. So the kunuz, or the treasures, will follow him كَيَعَسِيبِ النَّحْلِ, like the bees follows him. Amazing things, looks like miraculous things to the people, and that's why most of the people, they would follow him, and that's why it's the biggest fitna. And that's why the best of all of the shuhada, the martyrs, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, it's a man that he had to face the Dajjal, and he would say that I know that you are the Dajjal, you are the liar, and the Dajjal will split him into half with a saw, and he would walk between his two parts of his body to show the people that he killed him, and then he bring him back to life. So this believer would say, Wallahi, by Allah, ما ازددت فيك إلا يقينا, and no, the yaqeen and the certainty and the belief that you are the liar made me even more because of what you did. And then he won't be able, the Dajjal won't be able to touch him anymore. He would be deprived from doing this. So when many things, again, he comes from a land, as the Prophet ﷺ said, called Khurasan, from the east. This is where he comes out first. But his zuhur, his establishment, is in between Jordan and Iraq, Sham and Iraq. This is where he is going to first be effective or appear. And يتبعه 70,000 من يهود أصفهان, 70,000 of the Jews in Asfahan would follow him, and things of that nature. Ad-Dajjal and how he covers the entire earth And when the Prophet ﷺ was asked how long he would stay on the face of earth, he said 40 يوما, 40 days. يوم كسنة, first day is like a year, ويوم كشهر, and the second day is like a month, and then a day like a week, a Jumu'ah, and the rest of the days are like your days. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. That means he's not going to be effective there, but this is where he comes out first from. But Dhuhuru, that means he's now to be known, is in a place between Asham and Iraq. No. The Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned about the 40 days and the first one is like a year, again with these hadith, some people when they say it, meaning it feels long. No, but the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they said, فَذَاكَ الْيَوْمُ الَّذِي كَسَنَةً. It gives us the way that the Sahaba understood things. They asked the Prophet ﷺ, this day is like a year. أَتَكْفِينَ فِيهِ صَلَاةُ يَوْمٍ. Is it sufficient for us to pray the salah of one day or 1 year? And Sheikh Ibn Ibrahim, I remember when he was explaining this, and he says, subhanAllah, this is one of the benefits also that the ulama, they mentioned about this hadith, is that what concerns the Sahaba the most? They're not dealing about the Dajjal, this and that. Our salah, what are we going to do with the salah in that day that is 1 year? The most important thing in their life. So the Prophet ﷺ said, لا أقدر له قدره. That means you don't pray the five prayers only in that one day that is a year. You count for it how many prayers that you would pray in a year. And the ulama took many benefits from this in these countries where the sun doesn't set. How do they pray? فَقْدُرُ لَهُ قَدْرًا. That you basically count how many for every 24 hours you pray basically 5 prayers. So the 5 prayers have to be prayed as the Prophet ﷺ said. Ad-Dajjal again, with the many hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned and the time that he would come, and the people or the Muslims will be, it seems from the hadith that they will be strong and they will be fighting the Romans, and the many different details of that with the major things that what's going to happen as the hadith in Sahih Muslim. And then he would come down and the people, those who followed the Mahdi, would fight the Dajjal. And then the next subject, when we talk about Isa alayhi salam, he is the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make him kill the Dajjal, as it will be stated inshaAllah ta'ala. But it's very important for us, for what is left in the time, that we get to understand and to know the means of how to protect ourselves from this fitna. And this is really what matters. If we get warned of it, as we heard the Prophet ﷺ, he was not saying stories to the people. And even the Prophet ﷺ, he did not know which one is the Dajjal. And there is the long hadith of Tamim al-Dari, Sahih Muslim, where the ulama, they talked about it. And this hadith about Tamim al-Dari and others before they were Muslims, when they were stranded in the sea, in the ocean somewhere, and they were on an island, and the beast Ad-Dajjal came to them and took them to someone in chains inside, and he asked them certain questions as the signs for him to come out, and he informed them that he is the Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ heard this and approved for what he heard ﷺ with regards to the Dajjal himself. But the ulama, they say, Allah knows best if this thing that talked to them was a shaitan that is chained from the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, or the Dajjal himself. Because we don't have clear evidence of whether the Dajjal is alive and he is kept somewhere, or he will be born as a normal child, and even some of the narrations talks about his parents and things like this. So this is ilm that is not going to be benefiting for us. Whether to know it or not, it doesn't matter. And that's why what matters is that he is the biggest fitna, and this is the characteristics of the Dajjal, and for us to be warned against it by basically taking the means, general means and specific means, as we all know. General mean is those who will be protected from the fitna of the Dajjal, those who believe and are steadfast upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as we heard, those who have this following of the way of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, in such a way that we don't have to be convinced of how to follow the Prophet ﷺ. It's from the concept of following itself. Well, what is the meaning of al-ittiba'? Al-ittiba' is that you follow. Follow meaning, if you already made sense to yourself or made reason for yourself, you're not following. It's your decision based on what you think of what yourself is good. But when it comes to following, you're following someone that you don't know where he's taking you. But you know from the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is what is best for you. So following the way the Prophet ﷺ, even in these fitan, you would find some of the brothers, those who might be upon the sunnah and things like this, and they still fall into some of the fitan where the Prophet ﷺ warned us against. Whether it's with dealing with the Muslim ummah, the khuruj or revolting and all of these things, it becomes the norm among the people when the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from this. Clearly stated in the hadith. You're going to go by reason, it's your way of things and you see the outcome of it anyway. But if you follow the nusus and the text with the understanding of the early generations of Islam, this is the way for a person to be saved. وَمَنْ يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. And part of the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to understand how to follow this deen and to humble ourselves, because arrogance is not someone that looks in a weird way that he's arrogant. No, a person can look as if he's humble, very humble looking wise. Humbleness is in the heart. He is very humble and he's mashallah making ibadah, making dhikr, but he's a deviant. And he has arrogance in his heart because he refused to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, and he follows his desires and the pressures from others and the like of this. We all know the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and others where the Prophet ﷺ would teach the Sahaba, and that's basically the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from four things after the tashahud and before the salam, and we talked about that before. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min adhab jahannam, min adhab al-qabr, ومن فتنة المحيا والممات ومن شر فتنة المسيح الدجال. So 5 times a day at least, if it's the obligatory salah only. 4 things, one of which is ومن شر فتنة المسيح الدجال, and before that the fitna of life and the trials of life and the trials of death, and from the worst of the fitna of al-Masih al-Dajjal. So this is something, a physical mean, religiously known to follow to protect ourselves. We know the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to memorize the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf, or in some narrations the last 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf. And if you have to face, as we heard in the hadith, فَانْأَ عَنْهُ, you run away, but if you have to face the Dajjal, you recite these verses, the Dajjal won't harm you by the will of Allah. And Surah Al-Kahf, and ulama talked about the wisdom behind that, whether we know the wisdom or not, but this is sufficient for us. Surah Al-Kahf is about the fitan. It's about fitan. The major fitan in one's life. The fitna of the deen, when it comes to the story of the people of the cave themselves. They ran away from their people to protect their deen, the most valuable thing in their life. They don't play with their deen. The deen is not something to play with. إن كنت لاعبا بشيء فلا تلعبن بدينك. As Sufyan al-Thawri also rahimahullah said, if you had to, Imam Ahmad also mentioned this, if you play with something, don't play with your deen. Your deen is not something to play with. You might lose it, you might have it. Right? This is the first thing and the most important thing. So the surah with fitna of the deen, the people of the cave when they saved themselves to go to the cave, the fitna of ilm, the story of Musa alayhi salam and al-Khadr. Ilm can be fitna for the person, whether to follow it or not. And the fitna of power, as the case of Dhul Qarnayn. And the fitna of wealth, like the owner of the Jannatayn. So these are the fitna that we face, that we need to have constant reminders of how to deal with these trials in our life. And if a person, every time a fitna comes and he fails in it, what to expect? أَوَلَا يَرَوْنَ أَنَّهُمْ يُفْتَنُونَ فِي كُلِّ عَامٍ مَرَّةً أَوْ مَرَّتَيْنِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about the hypocrites, they keep on facing trials once or twice every year. So the fitan keeps on coming. And one of the signs of the hour that the fitan يُرَقِّقُ بَعْضُهَا بَعْضًا. When the fitan comes, the later fitna makes the person think of the previous one as was nothing. This was an easy one. But then it goes away and then comes the next one, a bigger one. And he would say, oh, the last one was much easier, and so on. So to recite the verses, to memorize them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, من حفظ 10 آيات من أول سورة الكهف عصم من الدجال. Whoever memorized the first 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf, he will be protected from the Dajjal. And فَمَنْ أَدْرَكَهُ, whoever had to face him, then فَلْيَقْرَأْ عَلَيْهِ فَوَاتِحَ سُورَةِ الْكَهْفِ. Let him then recite the beginning verses of Surah Al-Kahf. So this is again one of the ways to protect oneself. As we heard, and again I'm repeating it, one of the main reason and way for a person to be protected from the fitna of the Dajjal and from all fitan is to listen to what the Prophet ﷺ said. To follow the instructions as it is. Not according to my understanding and your understanding, but according to how the early generations of Islam understood it. So, again, I would mention the hadith. Man sami'a bid-Dajjal, whoever heard about the Dajjal, فَلْيَنْأَ عَنْهُ, run away from him as far as you can. فَوَاللَّهِ, Prophet ﷺ said, by Allah, إِنَّ الرَّجُلَ لَيَأْتِي, the man would go to the Dajjal, وَهُوَ يَحْسِبُ أَنَّهُ مُؤْمِنٌ, and the man thinks that he's a believer, and he knows the Dajjal. فَيَتْبَعُ, and he would end up following him. لِمَا يَبْعَثُ بِهِ مِنَ الشُّبُهَاتِ, because of how many shubuhat and doubts that he would send unto him. The doubts that would make the iman removed from his heart, and he would end up following the Dajjal. So, it is not by what the Prophet ﷺ necessarily said about the characteristics of the Dajjal and that's it. You can know all the characteristics of the Dajjal. But if a person does not follow the instructions and what the Prophet ﷺ said, knowing that is not going to benefit the person. So it's both. Warning from what the Prophet ﷺ, as he said, and the second thing is to follow the way the Prophet ﷺ. And a person should not expect that at the time of the fitna he would listen to the Prophet ﷺ. Hearts are by the full control of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for someone to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ, this is a reward from Allah. And that's why a person should, in the small things, in matters of ease, at times of ease, a person should make sure that he does not put forward anything before the deen of Allah and the way of the Prophet ﷺ. I'm not sure if what's mentioned, if what happens before that with regards to the Mahdi and the send of the Mahdi and the war between the Muslims and the Romans and the like of this has been mentioned or not, but this is also one of the signs of the hour, and there will be lots of fitan and trials that people would face. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, since he's the final messenger, to warn the people from anything and everything that they would need till the day of judgment for them to be protected. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from all fitan and from all trials. And if you have any questions, please go ahead, but we'll stop here. And then the next subject is Isa alayhi salam and the nuzul of Isa alayhi salam. Barakallahu feekum. Alaykum salam.
And they said that you know how they believe their prophet Ahmed is Isa and Mahdi and Ahmed, something like that. Confusing, but they showed two hadith. I'm not sure how authentic they are, but it showed that Isa would be a Khalifa, and it also showed that Mahdi would be the Khalifa. So is that true? Will they both be Khalifas at different times?
No, what as is going to be mentioned inshallah ta'ala, Isa alayhi salam, when he comes down, he's not coming down with a new tashri'ah or so. He is coming down to follow. And that's why when he comes down in Salatul Fajr, he would make Al-Mahdi, he's the one that leads. But then, there's not mentioned about what is going to happen to the Mahdi. But Isa alayhi salam, of course, he would lead the people. So, this is what, it's not about two Khalifas and things like this. There is no dalil about this, but Isa alayhi salam will be the one. The people, he would lead the people and the people would listen to Isa alayhi salam, but not as a new prophet. He comes as a follower of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sharia of the Prophet alayhi salam, and he would make Hajj and Umrah and he would die and people would make Salatul Janazah on him. Anything else, inshallah? Tfadl. No. Right.
But if I go like this, then if that doesn't talk with me, then what will happen?
If what?
If I go,
Right.
I close my eyes and I lower my head, then that doesn't say, hey, come.
No.
I have covered
when the Prophet ﷺ, he said that go to the one that is fire and close your eyes and ta'ti' ra'sahu, that means you lower your head and drink because it's cold water. The if questions, like what if Dajjal calls before I do this, what if? The if questions, we don't need it because the Prophet ﷺ, if there was a benefit in knowing, he would have mentioned it. So that means there is no what ifs. So if we just follow that, that means a person will be guided to do exactly as mentioned if he had to face the Dajjal. There is no way that the Prophet ﷺ, he would not give what is very comprehensive and he would give them less than what is needed. Like in situations again, what if that happened? There is no what ifs. It's not going to happen the way we might think things would happen. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is able to do all things. And that reminded me of when Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, someone came to him and he was asking about a mas'ala in matters of Hajj, and he gave him the answer. So the man said, what if people pushed me this and that? So the man was from Yemen. So he said to him, اجعل ماذا لو في اليمن, or leave what ifs in Yemen. Right, leave it there. Because this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. So that would be sufficient, inshallah. تفضل. جزاكم الله خير. حاضر إن شاء الله. I will إن شاء الله. Any more questions? تفضل.
I'm not sure if it's an authentic hadith, but Dajjal is going to be on a donkey years, I don't know how many years apart.
The question about the Dajjal will be on a donkey. How many years or how many years?
It's a donkey
with ears apart. I've never heard something like this. Oh well, that's a different story. But there's, and again, when it comes to the signs of the hour, there's so many fabricated stuff. And the reason for that, and the ulama they mentioned, because we as human beings were fascinated with what's going to happen and revelations and things like this. So that's why they make up stories, and there are so many make-up things that people would add, which is not authentic whatsoever. One of the beautiful things also, but I didn't want to, the time is constrained in this. Sheikh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he collected all of the different narrations which is authentic about the Dajjal, and he put them together as one hadith, as if you're reading one hadith, and he put them like points, and it was 49 points, 49 things that it's all authentic about the Dajjal. So this is a beautiful way to look into these evidences, and it's even called, I believe, Qissat al-Masih al-Dajjal, the story of al-Masih al-Dajjal, and it's published. You can have it, you can find it even on the internet, inshallah. I'm not sure if it's translated, but
What is the meaning of Masih?
now, the meaning, what is the meaning of al-Masih? And actually, what is the meaning of al-Masih al-Dajjal? Al-Masih has two meanings to it, or can have two meanings to it. One of which is someone that is wiping. So whether it's his eyes is wiped, so for Ad-Dajjal it's because he has one eye that is wiped. And for Masih Isa ibn Maryam, he's Masih because, which is the other meaning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiped with him the kufr or disbelief. So Al-Masih Ad-Dajjal, if its word Al-Masih is mentioned with regards to his eyes. Some people they say Al-Masih, but it's, Al-Masih is fine, but he is a false one, but because of his eyes is wiped. Ad-Dajjal is the liar, the one that is a big liar. Now.
They say that Dajjal is going to be the Masih of the Al-Yahud.
Now, one of the things that are mentioned with regards to Al-Masih, the most people, as we said, the most people that would follow him are the Yahud, the Jews, and they will have their kingdom then. And this is the Masih that they're waiting for. This is what they're waiting for, and he would establish their kingdom then. And that's why it's one of the biggest fitna also. And he is the one that is calling himself as to be the Lord of the Alami. So, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ said now. There's no specific, what about the Nasara? There's no specifics mentioned about what the Christians were, of course, but the disbelievers, they in general, they would follow the Masih al-Dajjal, and even from the Muslimin, they would follow the Masih al-Dajjal. Those who have weak iman and so on.
Does the Messiah they believe in?
Right. And the question is, the Christians and so on, they have this in their books, and they know about the Dajjal, the Antichrist and all of that. Because as the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا مِن نَبِيٍّ إِلَّا أَنَّهُ قَوْمَهُ. There is no prophet unless he warned the people from the Dajjal. So all of the prophets, they warned against the Dajjal, that's why everybody knows about him. But with the Prophet ﷺ, he gave us what no nations before gave as far as the information, specific information about the Dajjal. Now. Sorry, go ahead.
I heard something about how there's going to be like many Dajjals or multiple Dajjals before the Dajjal.
No.
Is that like a general term, like there's going to be many liars, or are they related to the Dajjal in one way or another?
Right. There is, and that's also part of what the question is. There are going to be many Dajjal, many Dajjals before the Dajjal. Are they a part of the Dajjal? I guess, or they are meaning liars. This is one of the things that would happen before the Dajjal comes. And this is one of the signs that the Dajjal is coming. There will be many Dajjal, that means many liars, but many liars with matters of people would follow them. And they would claim whether it's prophethood, they would claim that they are prophets. And the Dajjal in some of the narrations also that he would start by claiming that he's a prophet. And then he would change to claim that he is the Lord of the Alameen. So in aspects of religion, so whether it's prophets, those who claim to be false prophets, or matters of religion that people would follow them in one their line.
So like somebody, say for example, like Muhammad, or like the other, forgetting the name of them, like leader of the Nation of Islam, like they could fall under the category of like.
Now the question is mentioning Ghulam Ahmad, the leader of Nation of Islam, things of that nature. As far as the fiqh and the understanding of the signs of the hour, we don't apply these types of hadith on specific individuals, but rather to leave it the way it is. Of course, they're liars, so they are part of the Dajjal. That's what the hadith means. But in general, the meaning, the reason why I mention this is when some people they start to explain certain signs of the hour based on what we see nowadays. Like for example, what's happening in Palestine today, this is part of the signs of the hour. We leave the subject of the signs of the hour aside because it's going to happen by the decree of Allah. No one would doubt this. And that's why it's not something for a person to, because the issue as the danger of the Mahdi, for example, when people followed someone. So, but Allah Alam, yes, there will be many Dajjal. And are we close to the time of the Dajjal? Of course. No doubt about this. Even if the Prophet ﷺ at his time, he wasn't sure if the Dajjal is going to come at his time. And he said, if he comes at my time when he's alive, فَأَنَا حَجِيجُكُمْ, I will protect you. I will be there, so I'll suffice for you. And after me, فَكُلُّ مْرِئٍ حَجِيجُ نَفْسِهِ, every person, he is responsible for his own self. And the stories of Ibn Sayyad, this man at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, people were in doubt. Even the Prophet ﷺ himself, he was in doubt whether he is the Dajjal or not. And you go and ask him questions, and he said, اِخْسَأْ فَلَنْ تَعْدُوا قَدْرَكَ, that he is not. So to that extent, even the Prophet ﷺ did not know when the Dajjal will come.
This question should be asked for the next one about Isa, but I've been waiting to ask it for like time now. But the question was, there's a verse in the Quran that says, speaking about Isa, says, وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ
إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. No.
So somebody said that if they're all going to believe in Isa, all Ahl Kitab, and if this is what the verse means, then why would he be a shaheed alayhim?
No. نعم. The ayah وإن من أهل الكتاب إلا لا يؤمنن به قبل موته ويوم القيامة يكون عليهم شهيدا, with regards to Isa alayhi salam when he comes down, meaning that when he comes down, people would have only two choices: whether they believe in him, or whoever he sees from the people, from the disbelievers and those who disbelieve in him in the right way, they would die instantly. So the verse either refers, people will die if whoever Isa alayhi salam comes down and look at someone, as far as his eyes can reach, the disbelievers will die when he sees them, because he won't take the jizya, either al-Islam or they will die. And therefore, the ayah, as ulama, they say in the tafsir of it, the belief, not necessarily the belief, al-iman al-shar'i, not necessarily the iman, the belief that they would get them to be righteous. It's the fact that it's the belief that it's too late. Like for example, amanna bihi, when the disbelievers would say, when the punishment comes, like Fir'aun, amantu billadhi unzila alladhi amantu billadhi amanat bi banu Israel. I believe in what the people of Bani Israel believed in. But this iman did not benefit him because it was after he saw the truth, meaning at the moment of death. So some said this is what it means. And the other meaning, which is also correct, those who would believe in him, and yes, they were Christians, and when they see Isa alayhi salam, they would believe in him in the right way, that he's a messenger of Allah, because when he comes down, yaksiru as-sarib, he would break the cross and kill the pig. So, and they would believe in him in the right way, and some would continue to be in their disbelief, and this is when they'll die as a result of that. No.
Is there a specific time frame? How long will that deal be leading people before Isa comes?
There's a time frame where how long the Mahdi would lead the people before Isa alayhi salam comes. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. As far as the authentic hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, there's no authenticity of exactly. Allahu a'lam mentioned the number of how long exactly. No. So,
Sheikh, there's a hadith where there's like a little boy. Rasul thought that he was
Sayyid, Ibn Sayyid.
So is this an authentic hadith?
Yes, the hadith of Ibn Sayyid is authentic. That the question is about the Prophet ﷺ. He thought, he was in doubt about this boy or Ibn Sayyid, that he was, whether he is the Mahdi or not. And this is authentic, yes. And the Sahaba, even afterwards, they would, when they see him, they would fear. And one time they got him angry and he gets so big and they were worried about this. But, this is, yes, this is true, because it shows that the Prophet ﷺ did not even know when the Mahdi, when the Dajjal would come.
So, when Isa alayhi salam comes back, and like you said, even Christians will accept him, will they do their shahada, or is it like they're that ounce of iman within them which makes them accept?
No. When Isa alayhi salam, when he comes, with the Christians, those who would believe in him, would they say the shahada or so? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best the details. But yes, from the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam till the day of judgment, whoever becomes a believer, he has to say the shahada. So as we know that this is a must. So that's why the knowledge that is known by necessity, it doesn't have to be mentioned, but either they will believe in him, meaning in the proper way that he's a prophet of Allah and so on, or only those who believe in him would live, and the rest, they would die by just once he look at them. So one last question, inshallah. No, actually, this is a good question. Is the Mahdi one of the major signs or the minor signs? Assuming that also this was mentioned before, the ulama, when they talked about the major and the minor, this is a way to classify the signs, but it not necessarily was mentioned like this in these two categories when the Prophet ﷺ said of what's going to come ahead. But the ulama classified it in certain ways, one of which is that the major signs refers to the things that's going to disrupt the norm of the life that we know today when it comes to the physical means. The sun coming from the west, Isa alayhi salam, these major signs that there's no more these normal means that people do things, the Dajjal for example, versus the spread of corruption and the spread of fitan. And the Mahdi, some had mentioned it that he's not from the major signs, because there's nothing extraordinary to the life of the people is going to happen. It's just normal activities of human beings. So some classified him within the minor signs, and some said that he is from the major signs because he's attached to the fact that Isa alayhi salam will come down and these major events will happen. Allah. Well, he told me we have 4 minutes, I guess. Okay. Go ahead. Now, the Dajjal, would he come at the time of the Mahdi time or not? When the Mahdi is there, and a caller would call, as the Prophet ﷺ, he said, and he would say that in the Dajjal khalafakum fi dhararikum. That means the Dajjal is, he showed up in your families. This is when they're fighting with the Dajjal. So he would come when the Dajjal would come when Mahdi is present. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. Now,
it's just
not sure if there are like specific answers or if there's some type of information we have on it. Isa, when he returns, like, since he's a human being without perfect knowledge and he's going to be a follower of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will he have to learn, say for example, like Arabic, and he will have to like learn the Quran as like all the other Sahaba did? Or is that something that like Allah will give him like that will wisdom and knowledge and like will be like happy already when he comes and he'll have like enough knowledge of Islam already?
The question is, when Isa alayhi salam comes and he's a follower of the Prophet alayhi salam, would he learn the Arabic language, for example, and the deen of Islam and things like this, or he will come being inspired to follow? There's no details of what's going to happen, but the fact of the matter is that the Prophet ﷺ said when he comes down, Isa alayhi salam, he would refuse to make the Imam of the Salah, and he comes as a follower of the Prophet ﷺ. Nobody will teach him the Salah, of course. He will come as Salatul Fajr, he would pray Salatul Fajr, he will make Hajj and Umrah, and he's going to be the one that leads the people like this. So that means it's already as if it's known in an implicit way that he is not someone that someone else will teach him. He comes as a follower of the Prophet ﷺ with all of what the Prophet ﷺ brought, and that brings something funny with the ta'assub. And people, when they're fighting with the madahib, some said Isa ﷺ will be Hanafi when he comes down. Some said he's going to be Maliki. And this is, where is that knowledge of? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
So all the issues within madhabs and things, all of that's going to get cleared when he comes to Isa ﷺ.
The issues of the madahib will go away when Isa alayhi salam comes down and things like this. When it comes to the madahib al-fiqhiyya, actually there's no problems whatsoever, and these types of differences were present at the time of the Prophet alayhi salam, meaning with the companions radiallahu anhum, in the matters of fiqh, in the matters of the furu'ah. The problem is the ta'assub, is the prejudice and fighting and being enmity with one another, or the differences in matters of aqidah, which is evil. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, and there's always definitely when two opposite opinions, one is right and one is wrong, but what is wrong, it doesn't mean that the person is committing a sin. He gets a reward also, as long as the concern is to follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. So Wallahu a'lam. We'll stop here inshallah. Sallallahu alaihi wa sallam, Muhammad wa sahbihi wa sallam. And after Salatul Dhuhr inshallah we'll continue with the subject of Isa alayhi salam.